I thought I knew the woman my daughter had become. But the moment she told me not to come home on Christmas Eve, I realized I didn't know her at all. And when I ignored her warning and showed up anyway, I uncovered a betrayal so dark it shattered everything. Before we dive deeper, hit subscribe and join us where betrayal, drama, and hidden truths unfold. Also, let us know where you're listening from in the comments. The phone rang at 3:17 a.m. I glanced at the screen. The name that lit up the display sent a shudder through me. Sarah, my daughter. She was 32 now, but she was still my baby, the one I had raised alone, the one I had loved more fiercely than anything else in this world. But something was wrong. Something had changed. I had spent the evening preparing my famous Christmas dinner. Just like every year, the house smelled like cinnamon and pine, and there was a quiet anticipation in the air. I was excited. It had been a rough year for both of us. Work had been exhausting, and Sarah had been distant, like she was carrying some weight I couldn't understand. But this year, I told myself, would be different. We would have a fresh start. I had even gone out of my way to get her favorite dessert, the one she always demanded every holiday, cherry pie, just the way she liked it. But as I picked up the phone, I felt a tightness in my chest. Mom. Her voice broke through the silence, faint and strained, as though she were forcing the words out, like they were lodged in her throat. I don't want you to come. I froze. What? My mind raced, desperate to comprehend what she was saying. Sarah, what are you talking about? It's Christmas Eve. I've been planning for this day for weeks. I'm already. No. Please don't. She interrupted, her voice cracking, a sob slipping through. I mean it. I don't want you to come. I could hear her crying now, soft, but filled with something I couldn't quite place. Sarah, what's going on? I asked, my heart pounding in my chest. You don't have to. I just don't want you here, she said, choking back more tears. I stood there, phone pressed to my ear, unable to speak. It felt as if the floor had been ripped out from under me. It wasn't just the words. It was how they were said. As though she had made up her mind. As though she had already erased me from her life. A flood of emotions hit me. Betrayal, disbelief, and a sharp, sudden sense of loss. The years of sacrifice. The nights I stayed up worrying. The years I spent alone in her corner, hoping this wouldn't happen. None of it mattered. I had always believed we were a team. I had never doubted that we would always be there for each other, no matter what. But now, as her voice trembled through the phone, I realized that I had been wrong. She didn't want me there. She didn't want me at her Christmas. The words hung in the air, suffocating. I didn't know what to say. What could I say? Sarah. My voice cracked. I could feel the tears rising, but I fought them back. What happened? What did I do? But she was already gone. The line went dead, leaving only the cold, empty silence of the phone in my hand. I stood there, staring at the screen for a moment. Then slowly, I lowered the phone and set it down on the kitchen counter. My hands were shaking. I stared out the window where the lights from the neighbors' houses blinked cheerfully in the darkness. The contrast was jarring. I was standing on the edge of a cliff, and the world around me seemed to go on without me. The house felt too quiet now, too empty. I couldn't let it end like this. I couldn't. A flood of memories rushed back to me. Her first steps, her first words, her graduation, all the little moments that had shaped our relationship, all the years I had spent building this fragile bond between us. And now she didn't want me. But I wasn't ready to let go, not yet. I knew what I had to do. I had to show up. I would not let my daughter close the door on me like this. I grabbed my coat, threw on my shoes, and stepped out into the cold night. The driveway was empty, save for the faint trace of snow on the ground. I had 2 hours to drive to her house. My hands gripped the wheel tightly as I started the car, my mind racing with 1,000 thoughts. Was I overstepping? Was I pushing too hard? I didn't know anymore. All I knew was that I could not let her throw me away like this. She was my daughter, and no matter how much it hurt, no matter how much she rejected me, I would not walk away. I had never walked away from her, so I drove, through the silent, snow-covered streets, under the cold, indifferent sky. The radio played quietly in the background, but I barely heard it. My thoughts consumed me. I kept thinking about what she had said. Those cruel words, "I don't want you here." It cut through me like a knife, but I had to show her that I still cared. I had to show her that, no matter what, I was her mother, and I would not let her push me away without a fight. I couldn't let this be the way we ended, not on Christmas. I drove faster, my heart pounding in my chest. The road stretched out in front of me, long and cold, the world around me growing darker. When I arrived at her house, the porch light was on, casting a soft glow over the yard. I sat in the car for a moment, staring at the house. What if she didn't open the door? What if she slammed it in my face? What if... No, I couldn't think about that. I had made my choice. I was here, and I was not leaving until she knew just how much I loved her. I stepped out of the car and walked to the front door. My heart pounded. My breath came out in short bursts, fogging up in the cold air. As I reached for the doorbell, I paused. A shadow moved behind the curtain. Then the door slowly creaked open, but it wasn't Sarah who stood there. The door creaked open wider, but it wasn't Sarah standing in the doorway. It was someone I hadn't expected, someone I didn't even recognize at first. Her hair was dark, shoulder length, and her eyes were hard, cold, even. She was young, maybe mid-20s, with a thin, almost predatory look to her. She wore a long black coat, one that didn't seem to belong to the cozy Christmas atmosphere I had imagined when I started this drive. The moment our eyes met, I felt a flicker of something dark, something wrong. She wasn't the person I had imagined opening the door. She wasn't Sarah. I swallowed, my throat dry. "Is Sarah here?" I asked, my voice shaking only slightly. The woman looked at me, her eyes scanning me with an almost dismissive air. Then without a word she stepped back, allowing me to cross the threshold. I stood there for a moment, unsure what to do. The warmth of the house hit me like a wave, but it wasn't the warmth I had hoped for. It wasn't the scent of Sarah's laughter, the sounds of Christmas music, or the quiet comfort I had anticipated. There was something different in the air, something heavy, as if it had been stretched too thin and was about to snap. I slowly moved into the hallway, my heart pounding in my chest. It had been years since I had been in this house. Sarah's house. The house she had moved into just a few months ago. I had visited only once before. A quick stop to drop off some clothes. But now it felt alien. I looked at the woman in front of me, who had yet to speak. She watched me intently as though waiting for something. But what was it? What was her role in all of this? "Who are you?" I finally asked, the question burning on my tongue. She didn't flinch. "I'm Ellie," she said, her voice low, even. "I'm Sarah's girlfriend." Girlfriend. The word hit me like a slap. I hadn't known. I hadn't even suspected. All those years I had spent focused on Sarah, her life, her struggles, her choices. And I hadn't even known she was hiding something this significant from me. A girlfriend. When had this started? I tried to hide my surprise, but I'm sure it was written all over my face. The words felt too small, too inadequate for what I was feeling. Ellie said nothing else. Instead, she stepped aside, just enough for me to see further into the house, to see the dimly lit living room where a fire burned faintly in the corner. I heard movement in the next room, a soft rustling, a familiar voice, but it wasn't Sarah's. It was a man's voice, low and muffled, too far away for me to understand what was being said. My stomach tightened, a heavy knot forming as the weight of this unfamiliar situation settled in. Sarah hadn't mentioned a man. I thought no. I had believed she was on her own, that the last few months had been tough for her, and she needed space. But this felt different. Ellie moved slightly, and for the first time, I noticed the look in her eyes, sharp, calculating, like a predator sizing up its prey. I wasn't sure what to make of her. There was something about her that unsettled me, a certain coldness that seemed to fill every space she occupied. I cleared my throat, trying to steady my thoughts. I had come here for Sarah. I had come to make things right, to fight for the bond we once shared. I had to focus on that. "Where is Sarah?" I asked a little more forcefully this time. Ellie didn't respond right away. She merely stood there, watching me, as if she were deciding how much she was willing to reveal. I could feel the tension between us, thick and palpable, hanging in the air like smoke. "She's in the back," Ellie said finally, her tone flat, dismissive. "I think she's busy." Busy? I didn't know what that meant. My pulse quickened, but I held myself together. "I'm here to see her," I said firmly. "I don't care what she's doing. I need to talk to her." Ellie raised an eyebrow, almost amused by my insistence. "I don't think she wants to see you," her voice dropped, quieter now, as if speaking the truth softly would somehow make it less sharp. "She's asked me to keep you out." My breath caught in my chest. So that was it. This wasn't just about her not wanting me at Christmas. This wasn't about her being upset over some trivial thing. She had already chosen her side. She had already made it clear where I stood in her life. And now, it wasn't just Sarah who was shutting me out. It was her girlfriend too. I felt a flash of heat rise in my chest, but I swallowed it down. I wouldn't let this break me. Not now. "I'm not leaving," I said quietly but firmly. Ellie's expression darkened, and I could see a flicker of frustration in her eyes. She moved closer to me, blocking my path to the back of the house. "You don't get to just walk in here, Linda," she said, her voice low and dangerous. "You've lost that right. You can't just show up whenever you feel like it and expect everything to be fine." I felt my heart sink further. The words were like a slap, but they were also a revelation. I was no longer a part of her life in the way I thought I was. I wasn't just a mother showing up for Christmas dinner. I was an outsider, a stranger. I wanted to scream. I wanted to demand an explanation, but I didn't. I held myself back. "I'll speak to Sarah," I said, my voice steady despite the storm raging inside of me. "She'll let me in." Ellie didn't budge. "No," she said flatly. "She won't." For a long moment we stood there, locked in a silent standoff, neither of us willing to move. Then finally, Ellie stepped aside, a small tight smile playing at the edges of her lips. "Do what you have to do," she said softly. "But just know this, you're not welcome here anymore." The words stung, but I refused to let them break me. I didn't look at her as I pushed past her and made my way toward the back of the house. I couldn't let her see how badly she had hurt me. I had come here to fight for my daughter. I wasn't leaving without her. I stood in the hallway, the sound of my footsteps muffled by the thick carpet beneath me. The tension in the air was thick, almost suffocating. It was as though the house itself knew something was wrong. I had expected Sarah to come out. I had expected some kind of reconciliation, an apology, an explanation, but instead I was faced with Ellie, someone I had never even met. Someone who had no business standing between me and my daughter. But as I stood there, trying to calm my racing heart, I realized something. I wasn't just angry at Ellie. I wasn't just angry at the situation. I was angry at Sarah. The realization hit me like a cold wave. I had given so much of myself, so much of my life to this girl, and now she was shutting me out. I had sacrificed everything for her, my career, my friends, my health, everything. I had always put Sarah first, even when it meant putting myself last. Every choice I made had been for her. Every moment spent away from home had been to make sure she had what she needed. I had been a mother, and I had been good at it. But Sarah didn't see that. She didn't see the long nights I spent waiting up for her to come home, the hours I spent looking for work, the sacrifices I made just to give her a better life. She didn't see all of it, all the love I poured into her, all the care I gave. Instead, she saw a mother who had let her down, a mother who wasn't enough. Was that my fault? Had I failed her? I could feel the anger rising, hot and fierce. My fists clenched at my sides. The betrayal stung. The way she dismissed me, shut me out without explanation. It was as if everything we had built together had meant nothing to her. But I couldn't just stand there and let it go. I couldn't just let her do this to me without confronting her. No. I had to make her understand. I had to make her see what she was doing, what she had done to me. And maybe, just maybe, I had to make her feel the pain I felt. Revenge. The word echoed in my mind. I never thought of myself as someone who would seek revenge. I had always been the one to turn the other cheek, to forgive, to move forward. But this was different. This wasn't just a betrayal. This was something deeper, something more painful. Was it wrong to want to make her feel what I was feeling? Was it wrong to want her to know the hurt she had caused? I couldn't stop myself. The more I thought about it, the more I wanted to make her understand. I wanted her to see how much it hurt, how deeply it cut. The silence in the house was oppressive. I couldn't stand it. I needed answers. I needed closure. I walked toward the back of the house, past the kitchen, my steps slow but determined. My hand rested on the doorknob, and for a moment I hesitated. What would I find on the other side? I knew this was dangerous. I knew that confronting Sarah, especially with the way things were, could backfire. But I couldn't stop myself. I had already driven all this way. I had already put myself out there. I had to do this. I opened the door slowly, cautiously. The sight before me shocked me. Sarah was sitting on the couch, her face pale, her eyes red from crying. She looked up at me, her gaze a mixture of sadness and something else, something I couldn't quite place. "Mom," she said softly. Her voice cracked, and I could see the hurt in her eyes, the same hurt that had filled my own heart not long ago. But it wasn't enough. It wasn't enough for me to just see her hurt. I needed to hear it. I needed to understand why she had done this to me. "Why?" I asked, my voice quieter than I intended. The anger was still there, but now it was buried beneath the layers of pain. "Why did you push me away? After everything I've done for you, after everything we've been through. Why now?" Sarah looked away, her shoulders shaking with a sob she was trying to suppress. "I didn't mean to hurt you," she whispered. I needed space. I needed to figure things out. I couldn't contain it anymore. The flood of emotions, the years of feeling neglected, the years of putting her first, the years of sacrifice came rushing out of me. "Space?" I repeated, my voice rising. "You've been pushing me away for months, Sarah. I've tried everything to reach you, but you've just shut me out. And now on Christmas, of all days, you tell me I'm not welcome. You tell me not to come. I didn't want you to see me like this," she said, her voice shaking. "I didn't want you to see how broken I am." A cold wave of realization hit me. I was looking at her, but I wasn't seeing her. I had been so caught up in my own pain, in my own betrayal, that I hadn't seen the one thing that mattered most. Sarah had been hurting too. The thought took the wind out of my anger. She had been struggling. She had been broken in ways I hadn't understood. I had expected her to be strong, to always have it together. I had expected her to be the daughter I had raised. But she wasn't, and that hurt even more than anything she had said. I felt a knot form in my throat. My anger melted into something else, something softer but more painful. Regret. Maybe revenge wasn't the answer. Maybe it never had been. But even as the thought crossed my mind, I couldn't deny the bitterness still rising in me. I wanted her to understand. I wanted her to know the damage she had done. I wanted her to feel the way I felt. But at the same time, I saw her pain too. The two emotions, love and hurt, clashed inside me, a storm I couldn't calm. I turned away from her, unsure what to do next. The house felt smaller, cold. Every word I spoke felt like it was being swallowed up by the silence between us. What did I want from her now? What was I even trying to achieve? I couldn't answer that question. Not yet. But I knew one thing. I couldn't leave like this. I couldn't let this be the end. Not without knowing the truth. Not without fighting for her one more time. I stood in the living room, the weight of everything crashing down on me. The tension between Sarah and me was unbearable. Her tear-streaked face, her downcast eyes. It was clear she was struggling, but the truth remained elusive. just out of reach. There was something more, something I wasn't seeing. I had always prided myself on being there for her, on understanding her in ways no one else could. But now, as I looked at her, I realized how little I truly knew. I had been so focused on my own pain, my own sense of betrayal, that I hadn't taken the time to really understand hers. Her silence screamed louder than her words. She wasn't just avoiding me, she was hiding something. I took a deep breath and tried to steady myself. This wasn't about me anymore. This was about her. I looked at Sarah, my heart aching. Tell me what's going on, Sarah. Please, what's really happening? She swallowed hard, her hands clenched in her lap. For a moment I thought she might not answer, but then slowly, she spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. I've been seeing someone you don't know, she said, her words shaky, as if admitting it out loud made it all too real. I froze. This wasn't what I had expected to hear. She had been seeing someone. That explained a little, perhaps. But why keep it from me? Why the secrecy? I had never been the type to judge her choices. She had always been free to live her life the way she wanted. But this felt different. It felt like something had been hidden from me for far too long. A boyfriend? I asked, my voice betraying the confusion I felt. She nodded, but her face twisted with something darker, something I hadn't seen before. No, she said, her tone now harder. Not just a boyfriend, a mistake, a big one. She choked on the words, her face crumpling as though she were trying to hold it all together. But the more she tried to hold it in, the more it slipped through her fingers. I stepped closer to her, my heart heavy with fear. What had she done? What happened, Sarah? What mistake? The room was heavy with her silence. She shook her head, unable or unwilling to speak. It was as though she were trapped, caught in something she couldn't escape. I felt the floor beneath me shift as she continued to spiral. She had been hiding something, but what? I reached for her hand, a desperate attempt to break through the wall she had built around herself. You can tell me, whatever it is, I'm here. She pulled her hand away, her eyes darting around the room as though looking for an escape. My heart dropped. I don't know how to tell you, she whispered, her voice trembling with emotion. I don't even know how to tell myself. It's not just about the boyfriend, it's everything, everything. That one word hung in the air between us like a dark cloud. I felt the ground shift beneath me. Everything? What did she mean? What was she not telling me? I took a step back, my mind racing. There had to be more. There had to be something I could hold on to understand why she had pushed me away, why she had shut me out. But all I had was this gaping hole of confusion. The more she withheld, the more I felt like a stranger to her, and that hurt more than anything she could say. I don't understand, I said quietly. Why are you hiding this from me? Why didn't you just tell me? I couldn't, she almost shouted, her voice breaking. I couldn't tell you because I knew you'd be disappointed. I knew you'd hate me. Hate you? The word stung, and I was almost certain I had misheard her. I would never hate you, Sarah. But she didn't believe me. Wouldn't you? She asked, looking me square in the eye as though daring me to deny the truth. Wouldn't you hate me if you knew what I did? The things I let happen? I stood there, paralyzed, the weight of her words sinking into me. What had she done? What was she hiding? The more I tried to understand, the further she seemed to pull away. Sarah, I whispered, my voice soft with hurt. I just want to help. Please tell me. Let me help you. But she only shook her head, tears welling in her eyes as she buried her face in her hand. I don't know how, she whispered. I don't know how to fix this. I don't know how to make it right. My heart broke in that moment. This wasn't about me. Not really. It wasn't about the hurt I felt, no matter how deep it was about her, about the pain she had been carrying for who knew how long. I moved to sit beside her, my arm gently resting on her shoulders. We'll figure it out, I said, my voice firm, though it trembled with emotion. You don't have to go through this alone. For a long moment, we sat there in silence. The minutes stretched on, each one heavier than the last. And then, after what felt like an eternity, Sarah finally spoke again. I was pregnant, she said, her voice barely audible. I didn't know what to do, so I had an abortion. Her words hit me like a punch in the gut, knocking the breath out of me. Pregnant, an abortion. The weight of the words, The gravity of what she was admitting left me speechless. I wasn't prepared for this. I hadn't been ready for this truth to come tumbling out. I thought I could handle it, Sarah continued, her voice shaking. But I couldn't. I was so scared, Mom. I didn't know how to tell you. I didn't know if you'd ever understand. I thought you'd hate me for it. I thought you'd be ashamed of me. I could feel the pain radiating from her, the shame and guilt that had been building up inside her for so long. My heart broke for her. And yet I felt a surge of anger rise in me, not at her but at the situation, at the choices that had been made, the circumstances that had led us here. I never would have hated you, Sarah, I said softly, my voice full of emotion, but you should have told me, you should have trusted me. Her eyes were filled with pain as she met my gaze. I couldn't, she whispered. I was so afraid of losing you, afraid of disappointing you. I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. This wasn't about me. It wasn't about my hurt anymore. It was about Sarah and the pain she had been carrying in silence. I'm not disappointed in you, Sarah, I said, my voice steady now though my heart was breaking. I'm disappointed that you felt like you had to carry this alone. We sat there in the heavy silence, the weight of the truth between us. The secrets were out now, but the damage had been done. The hurt was still there, still raw and unhealed. But for the first time in what felt like forever, I felt like we were finally seeing each other. Even though we still had a long way to go, I knew that this moment, this painful, heartbreaking moment, was a beginning, and for the first time in a long while, I felt a flicker of hope. The silence between Sarah and me felt suffocating. I could hear the faint ticking of the clock on the wall, its steady rhythm mocking the stillness that had taken over the room. Her confession had torn the fragile fabric of what I had believed was the foundation of our relationship. It was a truth I wasn't prepared for, one I didn't know how to process, let alone accept. I sat there next to her, my heart heavy, but I couldn't seem to form the words. The air between us was thick, laden with pain and regret. I had always thought I knew Sarah, understood her every move. But now, I realized I hadn't known her at all. Not really. The shock from her revelation was still settling in. But as the minutes passed, something inside me began to shift. My mind raced, trying to make sense of everything. The secret she had kept, the betrayal, the pain she had hidden from me. All those years of being her mother, of watching over her, of making sure she never felt alone. And yet she had kept this from me. Why? Why hadn't she trusted me? Why hadn't she let me in? I felt a swell of anger rise in my chest, the kind of anger that I had never felt toward her before. Anger at the situation, at the choices that had led us here. But most of all, I was angry at myself for not seeing the sign. I had been so focused on her well-being, so absorbed in making sure she had everything she needed, that I had missed the most important thing of all, her heart. My mind replayed the events of the last few months. The distance, the coldness, the late nights when she would stay in her room, locked away from me. I had thought it was just a phase, a natural part of growing up, but now it felt like a cruel joke. She had been carrying this weight alone, and I hadn't even noticed. Sarah, I said, my voice trembling with emotion, how could you keep this from me? How could you carry this burden by yourself? She looked at me, her eyes red-rimmed, her expression full of regret. She opened her mouth to speak, but no words came out. She was choking on the truth, suffocated by the guilt that had consumed her for so long. I didn't want you to hate me, she whispered, her voice barely audible. I didn't want to disappoint you. Disappoint me. The words cut deep. It wasn't about disappointment. It wasn't about me. It was about her. About the choices she made, about the fear that had driven her to hide the truth. I could never hate you, Sarah, I said, my voice shaking with the effort to keep it steady. But this is bigger than that. This is about trust. This is about you trusting me to be there for you no matter what. She nodded, tears slipping down her cheeks. I know, I couldn't. I didn't know how. I felt the weight of her words, but I couldn't shake the feeling of betrayal that had settled in my chest. How could she not have known that I would always be there for her? How could she have kept this from me, thinking I would turn my back on her? The anger inside me twisted, and for a moment I wanted to lash out. I wanted to scream at her, to tell her how hurt I was, how much this had shattered me, but I held it back. I stood up, pacing the room, trying to make sense of everything. My mind was a whirlwind, each thought spiraling into the next, faster and faster, until I felt dizzy. I needed answers, but more than that, I needed a way to move forward. How long? I asked suddenly, my voice sharp. How long have you been hiding this from me? She didn't answer right away, and that silence spoke volumes. Months, she finally whispered, her voice barely a breath. I've been lying to you for months. I didn't know how to tell you. I didn't know how to face you. I felt the weight of her words settle into my bones, a crushing weight that I wasn't sure I could bear. Months, she had been carrying this burden for months, suffering in silence while I remained oblivious. The anger inside me flared again, but this time it wasn't just for her, it was for me too. How had I missed it? How had I allowed this to happen without seeing it? But then, as quickly as the anger flared, it was replaced with something else. A deep, gut-wrenching sorrow, for her, for me, for everything we had lost. I stopped pacing and turned to face her. She was sitting there broken, the weight of her choices bearing down on her. But I couldn't bring myself to comfort her. Not yet. I wasn't sure I could. I don't know if I can forgive you, I said, my voice trembling. The words came out in a harsh whisper, but I didn't regret them. Not yet. You've hurt me, Sarah. You've hurt me in ways I didn't think were possible. She looked up at me, her face pale, her eyes wide with fear. I'm sorry, she whispered. I didn't mean to hurt you. I didn't mean for any of this to happen. But the apology felt hollow. It didn't feel like enough. How could it? The truth of what had happened, the weight of the choices she had made, was too much to bear. I couldn't just sweep it under the rug. The silence stretched between us again, the air thick with the unspoken words, the unhealed wounds. I wanted to scream. I wanted to lash out, to make her feel the pain I felt. But something stopped me, because deep down I knew it wasn't about me anymore. It was about her, about what she had gone through, what she had faced alone, and I couldn't let her suffer like that anymore. I turned away from her, my heart heavy with grief. I needed space. I needed time to process everything that had happened. But as I walked toward the door, I heard a voice from behind me. Mom, Sarah said, her voice barely a whisper. There's something else I need to tell you. I froze. I couldn't face her again, not after everything. But I turned around, my heart hammering in my chest. I'm pregnant, she said quietly, the words falling from her lips like a bomb. Pregnant. The word hit me like a punch to the gut. It took me a moment to process it, but when I did, the world seemed to stop. I turned toward her, my mouth dry, my heart racing. How could you be? I didn't know until recently, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. I've been trying to figure out what to do, but I don't know. My mind spun, trying to comprehend the weight of what she had just said. Pregnant. She was pregnant, and I didn't even know. I felt like I was drowning in a sea of emotions, grief, anger, betrayal, confusion, and now, a new fear gripped me. What was I supposed to do with this new revelation? I couldn't believe it. I didn't know what to believe anymore. The words hung in the air like a heavy fog. Pregnant. I couldn't shake them. I stood there in the dim light of Sarah's living room, the word echoing through my mind like an unanswered question, a riddle I couldn't solve. I didn't know what to say. How could I respond to something like this, when everything in me was so tangled up in anger, hurt, confusion, and fear? The silence between us grew thick, suffocating. I could feel it pressing in on me, pushing the air from my lungs. My chest felt tight, as though the breath I needed couldn't escape. I wanted to yell. I wanted to scream. Pregnant. How could she be pregnant? And why had she kept it from me? Why had she kept it from me? Why hadn't she told me earlier? Why hadn't I seen the sign? But instead of raising my voice, I took a step back, sitting down on the couch. My head felt dizzy. My thoughts scattered in 100 different directions. I wasn't sure where to begin, what to say. There were too many questions, too many emotions. I don't know what to say, Sarah, I said softly, trying to steady my voice. I don't know how to process this. I don't know how to process it either, she whispered, her voice shaking. I've been trying to figure it out, but everything's just I could see the pain in her eyes, the guilt, the shame. She wasn't the daughter I had raised. She wasn't the girl I had hoped for. She wasn't the strong, independent woman I had always imagined her to be. She was a shell of that girl, torn apart by the weight of secrets and choices she didn't know how to undo. I looked at her, really looked at her for the first time in what felt like years. How did we get here? How did my beautiful, vibrant daughter end up in this place, making decisions like this, without me? I closed my eyes for a moment, trying to gather myself. The image of her as a child, innocent, bright-eyed, flashed through my mind. I remembered her first steps, the way she had clung to me when she was scared, the way she had smiled at me after each victory. I had been her whole world then. She had needed me then. But now, that was all gone. The woman sitting in front of me was no longer my child, but a stranger. Someone whose choices I couldn't control. Someone whose pain I couldn't erase. Sarah, I said after a long pause, my voice breaking, I need to know everything. Everything that's been going on. I need to understand what you've been going through. She looked up at me, her eyes filled with hesitation, but I saw something in them, something that made me realize that despite everything, she wanted to tell me. She wanted to open up. But the weight of everything was so heavy that she didn't know where to begin. And then, almost like a floodgate had been opened, she started speaking. It started with him, she said, her voice soft, almost distant. I met him at work. He was older, charming, and everything I thought I wanted. He made me feel special. He made me feel seen. Her voice faltered, but I didn't realize how much I was getting in over my head until it was too late. I nodded, trying to absorb the words. What happened, Sarah? Her lips trembled, and she swallowed hard. I got pregnant, and then things spiraled. She took a deep breath. I didn't know what to do. I wasn't ready to be a mother. I wasn't ready for any of it. But I didn't want to disappoint you. I didn't want you to think I was weak, that I couldn't handle things on my own. The pain in her voice was palpable. I could feel the weight of her words settling into my chest like a stone. She had been carrying this burden alone, too ashamed to reach out, too scared of what I would think. She had felt trapped, and I had been blind to it. I closed my eyes again, trying to push down the surge of emotions threatening to overtake me. This wasn't just about the pregnancy. This was about everything. About the woman she had become, about the choices she had made, about the distance that had grown between us. But as I listened to her speak, I realized something. This wasn't just about her. This was about me too. About my failure to see her, to understand. I had been so focused on being the perfect mother, on trying to protect her from the world, that I hadn't seen the cracks forming. I hadn't seen the signs that she was drowning. I took a deep breath, letting it out slowly. My hands were shaking, but I forced myself to look at her, to really look at her. I'm not angry with you, Sarah. I'm angry at myself, for not being there when you needed me. I should have seen this coming. She shook her head, tears spilling down her cheeks. It's not your fault, Mom. I didn't let you in. I didn't let anyone in. I wanted to reach out to her, to pull her close, and tell her that everything would be okay, that we would figure it out together. But the truth was, I didn't know if it would be okay. I didn't know what the future held. I didn't know what I was supposed to do next. I didn't know if I could forgive her. But more than that, I didn't know if I could forgive myself, for failing her, for not seeing the pain she had been hiding, for not being the mother she needed me to be. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. The room was heavy with unsaid words, with grief and regret. We were both searching for something that would make sense of all this pain, but there were no easy answers, no simple fixes. Finally, I stood up, my body stiff and tired from the weight of the conversation. I don't know what the future holds for us, Sarah, I said softly, but I know one thing. I'm here for you. I'm here no matter what. I may not have all the answers, but I'll be here to help you find them. She looked up at me, her eyes filled with gratitude and sorrow. "I don't deserve that, Mom," she whispered. "I don't deserve you." I reached out, placing a hand on her shoulder. "You don't have to deserve it. You're my daughter, and that's all that matters." As I walked toward the door, I felt a small flicker of something. It wasn't hope. Not yet, but it was a beginning. A small step forward, a beginning we both desperately needed. I stood at the edge of the room, my back to Sarah. The silence between us was thick, filled with everything we hadn't said. All the words that had been left unsaid for far too long. The truth was finally out. But it didn't feel like closure. It felt like the beginning of a new, more painful journey. The betrayal, the secrets, the broken trust. They were all out in the open now, but I still didn't know where we would go from here. I could hear Sarah sniffling softly behind me, her breaths coming in ragged gasps. The sobs she had been holding back finally broke free, and I could feel her pain as if it were my own. My heart ached for her, but it ached for me too. This wasn't just about what she had been through. It was about what we had been through, about the years we had spent building a life together, only for it to come crumbling down in one moment. "Sarah," I said, my voice thick with emotion, "I need you to understand something. I'm not here to make you feel worse. I'm not here to punish you. I'm here because I love you, because I want to fix this. But you need to be honest with me. You need to stop hiding from me." She was quiet for a long time, and for a moment, I thought she might not speak, but then she finally spoke, her voice broken, fragile. "I don't know how to fix it," she said softly. "I don't know how to fix me, how to fix what I've done." I turned slowly, my heart breaking all over again. She was sitting on the couch, hunched over, her head in her hand. Her shoulders shook with each sob, and I could see the deep shame in her eyes, the weight of everything she had been carrying. I wanted to reach out to her, to tell her everything would be okay, but I knew better than that. I knew nothing would be okay until we faced the truth, until we both faced what had happened and the damage it had caused. "You don't have to fix it all right now," I said, my voice soft but firm. "You don't have to have all the answers, but you do need to face what you've done. You need to face me, and you need to let me." She looked up at me then, her eyes red and swollen from crying. For a brief moment, I saw the girl I used to know, the girl who used to trust me, who used to look up to me. But that girl was gone, replaced by a woman who was lost, unsure of herself and unsure of where to go next. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I'm so sorry for everything, for the lies, for pushing you away, for not being honest." I took a step forward, my heart pounding in my chest. This was it. This was the moment I had been waiting for. The moment where I would finally get to say everything I had been holding in. The moment where I could finally lay my anger and hurt bare. Where I could make her understand just how much she had broken me. But as I opened my mouth to speak, something stopped me. Something deeper, something more raw, filled the space between us. I couldn't do it. I couldn't make her feel the way I had felt. I couldn't break her the way she had broken me. Instead, I sat down beside her, my body trembling with emotion. "You don't have to apologize for everything, Sarah," I said. "You've made mistakes, we all do. But what matters now is what we do with it. What matters now is how we move forward." Her tears slowed, though the pain in her eyes remained. She turned to face me, her expression filled with a mixture of guilt and fear. "I don't know how to move forward," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I don't know what to do." I reached out and gently took her hand, offering her what little comfort I could. "We move forward together. We take it one step at a time. But you have to let me help you. You can't do this alone, Sarah. You never have to be alone again." She looked at me for a long moment, her gaze flickering between uncertainty and longing. Then, slowly, she nodded, her hand tightening around mine. "I want to make things right," she said, her voice shaky but determined. "I know I can't undo the past, but I want to fix what's broken between us. I want to be the daughter you deserve." I felt a lump form in my throat, and for a moment, I couldn't speak. She wanted to make things right. She was ready to face the truth. She was ready to take responsibility for her actions. And that, more than anything, was what I needed to hear. "I don't know if I can ever fully forgive you," I said, my voice rough, the words tasting bitter as they left my mouth. "But I will try. I will try to forgive you. and I will try to forgive myself for not seeing the signs, for not being there when you needed me. She nodded again, tears welling up in her eyes once more. I don't deserve your forgiveness, she whispered, but I'm so grateful you're willing to try. I squeezed her hand. We'll figure it out, together. For a long moment, we sat in silence, the weight of the conversation hanging between us. But it wasn't the same silence as before. It wasn't the oppressive silence of secrets and betrayal. It was the quiet of two people who had finally begun to understand each other. I didn't know what the future held for us. I didn't know if we could ever fully heal from the wounds we had inflicted on each other. But I knew one thing. I wasn't ready to give up on her, and for the first time in a long time, I felt like maybe she wasn't ready to give up on me. I love you, I said, my voice barely more than a whisper. I will always love you, and no matter what happens, I'm here, always. She looked up at me, her eyes filled with gratitude and something else, hope. For the first time, I saw the possibility of healing in her eyes. I love you too, Mom, she said, her voice steady now but full of emotion. I won't let you down, I promise. And for the first time in a long time, I believed her. It wasn't the end. It wasn't the happy resolution I had always imagined for us, but it was a beginning. A difficult, painful, uncertain beginning. But a beginning nonetheless. We had both suffered, we had both made mistakes, but in that moment, sitting there together, I realized something. The love between us had never truly gone away. It had only been buried beneath the weight of our pain and misunderstandings. And now it was time to dig it back up. Just when I thought the storm inside me had settled, a new revelation hit. It wasn't just the echo of Sarah's tears, or the slow healing of the bond between us. There was something deeper. Something I hadn't expected. Something that threatened to unravel everything once more. I was still trying to process everything. Sarah's confession. Her apology, the shared moment of understanding, when I realized that despite all the hurt, we could still rebuild. But as we sat together, her hand resting in mine, something shifted. A text message buzzed on my phone, jolting me from the fragile peace we had created. I looked down at the screen, and my heart stopped. It was from someone I hadn't heard from in years. John, my ex-husband, Sarah's father, the man who had left us when Sarah was just a child. The man who had walked away from everything, leaving me to pick up the pieces. The man I had once loved, and now, well, now I couldn't even bring myself to hate him. I had long since learned to bury my feelings of anger, of betrayal. He had moved on with his life, and I had done the same. But this message was different. Linda, I need to talk to you. It's about Sarah. There's something you need to know. My breath caught in my chest. What could he possibly want to tell me about Sarah now? After all these years, after everything that had happened, the silence we had lived in, the distance between us, it felt like he was dredging up old wounds that had never truly healed. I didn't respond right away. My mind was spinning with 100 possibilities, each worse than the last. Could this be about her pregnancy? Could it be something that had been hidden from me? Something that would destroy the small amount of trust Sarah and I had started to rebuild? I looked up at Sarah, who was still sitting beside me staring at the floor. She hadn't seen the message, but I couldn't ignore the sudden sense of dread that had washed over me. I had to know what John was talking about. I had to understand what he... I'll be right back, I said, my voice low, my heart racing as I stood up. Sarah barely acknowledged me. Her face was still a mixture of exhaustion and sadness, as if she were struggling to make sense of everything that had come to light. I didn't want to add more to it, but I had no choice. I walked to the other room, needing space to breathe, to think. I needed to call John, but my fingers trembled as I dialed his number. The line rang, each second stretching into infinity. When he picked up, his voice was familiar, but there was something different in it. He sounded almost desperate. Linda, he said. His voice was tight, strained. We need to talk. I felt my stomach twist. I wanted to ask him everything in that moment. What was it? What did he know? But I couldn't bring myself to do it. Instead, I forced my voice to remain steady. What is it, John? What's this about Sarah? There was a long pause, and then he spoke again. It's not about Sarah directly. It's about the will. The will. My mind reeled. What could he possibly be referring to? The will was the last thing I ever wanted to think about. The document that had divided us. The reason he had left us in the first place. The will he had altered. The will that left me with nothing but heartbreak. "What do you mean, the will?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "There's something in it. Something I never told you," he said. "You need to know about it. It's important." My heart began to race. "What are you talking about, John?" I demanded. "What's in the will? What does this have to do with Sarah?" He sighed, a long drawn-out breath that made the pit in my stomach grow deeper. "I'm not proud of it, but I made a decision all those years ago. A decision I thought would be final, but it's not. It's never been final, and I can't keep hiding it. It's time you knew the truth." I gripped the phone tighter, my pulse hammering in my ears. "John, stop playing games. What's in the will? What about Sarah?" Another silence. This time, it stretched longer, and I could feel the tension building between us. Finally, he spoke again, his voice quieter, almost apologetic. "You weren't the only one who made sacrifices," he said. "I left you for a reason, but it wasn't what you thought. There's more to it, more that's been hidden." I swallowed hard, feeling the weight of his words pressing on me. "What are you saying?" "There's something in that will that changes everything. Something I didn't want you to find out. But Sarah, she deserves to know. She has the right to know." And then the truth hit me like a wave crashing against the shore. The will, the one thing I had never wanted to deal with again. The one thing that had kept me tied to John even after all these years. The will that held secrets, that held pain, had driven a wedge between me and the only family I had left. I could feel my heart pounding in my chest, and for a moment, I didn't know if I could breathe. "John, what's in the will?" I whispered. He hesitated again. Then the words finally came. "I left everything to Sarah." I stood there, stunned. I couldn't process it. My mind couldn't process what I was hearing. "Everything?" I asked, my voice barely audible. "Yes," he said quietly. "I left everything to her, Linda. Everything. You were never meant to know, but it's time you did. Sarah needs to know. It's hers. It's always been hers." I felt the room spin. My hands went cold, and my knees buckled beneath me. This wasn't just a revelation. This was a bombshell. This changed everything. I couldn't even form a thought. The world around me felt like it was crashing down, and I had no idea how to stop it. The words John had spoken echoed in my mind, a constant, unrelenting drumbeat. I left everything to Sarah. The weight of his confession pressed down on me, suffocating every breath I took. The world around me seemed to tilt, spinning on an axis I couldn't comprehend. I staggered back against the wall, my hands trembling as I struggled to process what I had just heard. I had known there had been pain between us, but this was a betrayal of an entirely different kind. The will, the one thing I had never wanted to revisit, the one document that had torn my life apart, suddenly held more weight than I had ever imagined. My thoughts spiraled, each one worse than the last. Everything, his wealth, his assets, the house we once shared, all of it was left to Sarah. How had I missed this? How could I not have known? I was on the verge of losing control. My chest tightened, and my breath became shallow as my mind raced. How long had Sarah known? How much had she kept from me? Had she ever mentioned it to John? Did she even realize the extent of what he had done? I couldn't take it anymore. I grabbed my phone, my fingers numb as I dialed Sarah's number, hoping for a conversation, some clarity. The line rang, and my thoughts raced even faster. What was I going to say? What was I hoping to hear? Finally, she picked up. "Mom?" Her voice was soft, tentative. I could barely find my voice. "Sarah, we need to talk," I said, my words trembling. "What's going on? What's wrong?" she asked, her concern palpable. "Where are you?" I demanded, the sharpness in my voice surprising even me. I wasn't angry with her, but I couldn't hide the urgency, the fear that had taken over. "I'm just in my room." "Why? What's going on?" "Come downstairs," I said, my voice steadying as I tried to gather my thoughts. "I need to see you." I hung up without waiting for a response, my hands shaking as I paced the room, the weight of the truth pressing in on me. I couldn't escape it. The world felt smaller, tighter, as if everything I had built was collapsing, under the pressure of secrets I hadn't even known existed. Minutes later, I heard her footsteps coming down the stairs. She appeared in the doorway, her face a mask of confusion and concern. "Mom?" she asked again, her eyes searching mine. I tried to steady myself, to force the words out, but they wouldn't come. I felt like I was choking on them, as if I were drowning in a sea of emotions too vast to navigate. I had always prided myself on being strong, on holding things together, but in this moment, I felt weak. I felt exposed, vulnerable, like I was standing on the edge of something I couldn't control. "Sarah," I whispered, my voice barely more than a breath. "I don't even know where to start." She stepped closer, her eyes wide with concern. "What happened? Why do you look like that?" "I just spoke to your father," I said, my voice breaking. "He told me something about the will." Her eyes flickered with recognition, then confusion. "The will? What about it?" I couldn't meet her eyes. I looked at the floor, at the space between us. "He left everything to you, Sarah. All of it." The room was still, the air thick with the weight of my words. I could feel Sarah's gaze on me, but I couldn't bring myself to look at her. The tension between us was palpable, as though the silence had grown too large to fill. For a long moment, she didn't say anything. I could hear her breathing, the soft rustle of her clothes as she shifted from foot to foot. It was as though she were trying to absorb the words, trying to make sense of the devastation that had just been revealed. Finally, she spoke, her voice small, uncertain. I didn't know he did that." "You didn't know?" I asked, my voice almost a shout, a mixture of disbelief and hurt. "How could you not know? How could you not have told me?" She shook her head, her hands shaking as she clutched the hem of her shirt. "I didn't know," she repeated, her voice cracking. "He never told me anything about it. I didn't know he left me everything. I didn't know." The words trailed off, leaving a gaping silence between us. I felt my anger flare, but this time it wasn't directed at her. It wasn't even directed at John. It was directed inward, at myself. I had spent years trying to protect her, trying to build a life for us both. But now everything felt like a lie. What had I been fighting for all these years? What had I sacrificed? I turned away from her, my emotions too overwhelming to contain. I paced the room again, my hands clenched into fists, my heart racing. "It's all been a lie, Sarah," I said, my voice thick with emotion. "All of it. The years I spent raising you, the sacrifices I made, and now I find out that your father left everything to you. Everything. And I didn't even know." She didn't move, she didn't speak, she just stood there, frozen, as though my words had struck her like a physical blow. "I didn't want this," I continued, my voice raw. "I didn't want any of this to happen, but it's too much, Sarah. I don't know how to keep going, how to move forward when I feel like everything I thought was real has been ripped out from under me." I could feel the tears rising, but I refused to let them fall. I refused to let her see me break down. Not now, not when everything had already shattered. "Mom," she whispered, her voice softer now, laced with understanding. "I don't know what to say, but I'm here. I'm not going anywhere." I turned back to face her, finally meeting her eye, and for the first time in what felt like forever, I saw something real in her gaze. There was no more hiding, no more walls between us. She had made mistakes, I had made mistakes, but in that moment, we were just two people trying to figure out how to move forward. "I know you're here," I said, my voice quieter now, "but I don't know if I can forgive your father. I don't know if I can forgive him for everything he's done, and I don't know if I can forgive myself for not seeing it sooner." Sarah took a step forward, closing the distance between us. She reached out, gently placing a hand on my arm. "We'll figure it out," she said softly. "We'll figure it out together." And for the first time in a long while, I believed. It had been weeks since that night, the night the truth came crashing down around us, shattering everything I thought I knew. Weeks since I had learned that John had left Sarah everything in his will. Weeks since I had stared into the face of betrayal. And yet I found myself waking each day, still standing. The pain hadn't gone away. It never did. not complete, but in the days that followed, something inside me began to shift. Something that had been buried deep within me, under layers of hurt and fear, began to surface. I was no longer the person I had been before that night. The woman who had walked into that living room, desperate for answers, broken by the weight of secrets, was gone. In her place stood someone else. Someone who was beginning to understand that the journey wasn't just about surviving, it was about healing. I spent hours talking with Sarah, trying to understand her pain, trying to work through our misunderstandings. It wasn't easy, it wasn't pretty. We both had to face things we didn't want, but in the midst of the tears, the anger and the apologies, I saw something else. Something I hadn't seen before, a new strength, a resilience. She wasn't just my daughter anymore. She had become someone else. Someone I had never expected to see. She had become a woman who was trying to take responsibility for her mistakes, for her choices. A woman who had been broken, but who was willing to fight for what mattered. The months following that night were filled with hard conversation. The silence between us wasn't just about the things we didn't say. It was about the things we had to understand. We both had to understand each other in ways we never had before. Sarah had been living in a world of fear, hiding from the truth, unsure of how to move forward. But in the light of the truth, I saw her for the first time. I saw the depth of her strength, and the pain that had driven her to make the choices she had. For my part, I had to understand that my anger, my hurt wasn't just about what she had done, it was about what I had failed to see. I had failed to see her pain. I had been so consumed by my own struggles, by the betrayal I felt, that I hadn't stopped to really look at her, to understand what she was going through. I had to forgive myself too. Forgiveness wasn't easy, it wasn't instantaneous, it wasn't some grand gesture that healed everything. But slowly, over time, I began to release the anger I had carried for so long. I began to understand that the love I had for Sarah didn't come with conditions. I couldn't demand perfection from her. She was just as flawed as I was, and for the first time in years, I allowed myself to feel something other than pain. I allowed myself to feel hope. It wasn't an instant transformation. There were still moments of doubt, moments where I questioned everything, moments where the shadows of the past crept in and reminded me of the damage that had been done. But slowly, step by step, the anger faded, the hurt softened, and in its place, something new began to grow. A connection between Sarah and me that I had never known before, a deeper understanding, a shared strength. Sarah and I had our moments of quiet reflection, of moments where the weight of everything we had been through settled between us, like an unspoken understanding. But we also had moments of laughter, moments where we sat together in the living room, just talking, She wasn't the same person she had been before the revelation. Neither was I, but that didn't mean we couldn't move forward. We didn't have to be perfect. We didn't have to have all the answers. We just had to keep moving, keep trying. There was one night, weeks after everything had started to settle, when Sarah and I sat together on the porch, watching the stars. The night was quiet, the world around us still. I looked at her, at the woman she had become, and I felt a surge of pride. She had grown. She had become someone who could face the consequences of her actions, someone who wasn't afraid to face the world, to face herself. For the first time, I wasn't scared of what the future held. For the first time, I felt ready to embrace it, to walk into it with Sarah by my side. And then, as if reading my thoughts, Sarah turned to me and smiled. "We're going to be okay, aren't we?" I nodded, my throat tight with emotion. "Yes, we're going to be okay." In that moment, I realized that all the years of pain, of sacrifice, of love and loss, had led us here, to this moment, to this understanding. It wasn't easy. It wasn't perfect. But it was real, and for the first time, I felt peace. "Thank you, Mom," Sarah said quietly, her voice soft but full of meaning. "Thank you for being here, for not giving up on me." I reached out and squeezed her hand, the simple gesture speaking volumes more than words could ever express. She had made mistakes. I had made mistakes. But in the end we had found each other. We had found a way back to one another. "My name," I whispered, the weight of it settling around me like a promise, "is Linda Hayes." It was more than just a name. It was a declaration. It was the beginning of a new chapter, a new understanding, a new way forward. And as I looked at Sarah, I realized that we had finally come full circle. We had been broken, but we had come back together stronger than before. The past no longer had the power to control us. We were free, we were whole, and we were ready to face whatever came next. What I learned from all this is that sometimes, the people we trust the most can break us in ways we never imagined. But the real question is, can we ever truly forgive them? Here at RL's Circle, your story matters too. If you found this story gripping, hit subscribe and stay tuned for more. But before you go, tell me, would you choose to forgive someone who shattered your trust? Or would the damage be too much to repair? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Let's talk about it.